You're listening to the Coffee Before You Talk to Me podcast, hosted by Bean Mug and Coffee Co.
Welcome to the Coffee Before You Talk to Me podcast, hosted by Bean Mug and Coffee Co. My name is Jose, along with my good friend Tom. Tom, it's been a while. How you doing?
Awesome, Jose. Happy to be back once again in the podcast studio. And today we have our friend Max from 3BR Distillery in Keyport with us. So, Max, it's great to have you. Welcome.
Yeah. Thank you for having us.
Our pleasure.
That we met at the farmers market.
Yeah, absolutely. That's our friend from the farmers market, which is I think the Circle of Farmers Market podcast interviews I think is gonna grow this season. They kind of want to work something in there, so it should be fun.
Yeah, this one we've been excited about this one since season 1. Truthfully,
oh yeah,
it's been on the radar for us for quite a while, and I'm glad we're able to finally link up.
Nice.
What we start off with, like every episode, is basically what gets you up in the morning.
Yeah. So, So definitely, I'm one of those people who kind of both can't sleep and also can't get out of bed sometimes in the morning.
Oh, I can't sleep, but I okay.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
So like I generally can't nap. Like I can't do it unless like my body's just failing on me. Always feels like there's a million things to do, and like so many people I'm letting down, and all these different things. Like all that, the weight of the world is like coming down on me, and so that usually means I stay up until like 2 or 3 in the morning, and then I can't get out of bed for my 9 a.m. so easily. You know, it's usually such a pain. But yeah, usually it's, I don't know. I grew up with my parents always working so much. We came over as immigrants from Russia. They had 6-month-old babies. They were working a ton. They were going to school here, trying to learn English and doing more jobs. And like, just grew up seeing my mom, my dad always just working. And between that and feeling like I really just want to make them proud and maybe give back something to them. Like always
That's
just
cool.
instilled this whole concept of like, is there time to relax type of mentality.
I understand.
Yeah.
I think we can both relate a little bit to that.
Yeah.
But if you ever have problems getting out of bed in the morning, just have some kids,
Yeah.
and they'll wake you up. Which is why I can't sleep, and then I can also get up in the morning.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that'll do it. So a little bit about the history of the distillery. I mean, I've been to your website only. I know Tom and Jay have been there.
Yeah.
And they told me great things about it. But can you get into more of the story of how it came to be?
Yeah, so it's kind of, I would say it's a long story, and I'll start a little before all of this happened, right? My brother and myself, ever the lovers of trying to entertain ourselves, we get focused in on different things. We're like, oh, this is the new thing. We were in college, we were at Rutgers, and for whatever reason, we fell in love with ginger beer.
Okay.
Completely unrelated to distilling and everything, but fell in love with ginger beer. This was more than 10 years ago. You couldn't really just go to a store and grab,
Nope.
your
Not
favorite
the
ginger
easiest
beer.
to find.
It was really such a like craft item, right? Like you had to go to specialty stores. So, we had just moved out for the first time, living with people we have no idea. Like we just didn't know them very well, and one thing we really got along with, it turned out, was this like random love of ginger beer with our one roommate. So we tried a bunch of different ginger beers. We bought from Amazon, from different stores, and we had our favorite. And randomly, we were like, you know what? We had just turned 21. We're like, let's try to make our own ginger beer.
Why not?
Right. And we're like, we just turned 21. Let's make it alcoholic, right? Because why not?
Yeah.
I like where this is going.
Yeah. So we're college kids working like crazy in restaurants, but like always, trying to make those dollars last. And when we decided to make this ginger beer, we didn't do it well. To start. Like there was cat hair floating in it. There was like it totally smelled rank. We were like, we cannot drink this. But we also just put in like $70 into this batch. We have to, you know, recoup it somehow. So our one roommate that we were doing this with, he was a PhD candidate on genetics and plant breeding, so science things,
of course he
right?
was. Why not?
Yeah.
Sounds like a good fit so far.
Yeah. So we were like, okay, well, science guy here. We're constantly in his lab while we're like doing our degrees. So we see all this equipment. We're like, well, why don't we just try to distill this ginger beer that we made and get something out of it that we can potentially drink, and so it wouldn't be a waste of $60. So what makes sense? We took the $60 investment we already put in, we tripled it. We put another $120 and buy a little mini still off of Amazon, because we're like, yeah, you know what? I think this is a good investment for the future. Obviously, like anything you buy for that kind of price off Amazon, and also the whole gray legality area, we had no idea of any of these different things.
You're making moonshine at this point,
right?
really.
Yeah. So we
It's not allowed. Whoops.
yeah, so we took our stuff. We were gonna run it through, and then we started doing research, my brother and I, and we get really focused in on different things, and we've had tons of different success in life because of it. Really had to do with how our dad raised us. This is gonna sound crazy, but this honestly, there's something to this method of I don't know, I guess like punishment for a kid. So our dad was a strong believer that there's no such thing as being grounded for a certain set period of time, right? Because he's like, a kid's gonna forget, kid's gonna just, you know, try to weasel his way out of it. You're gonna eventually forgive him, and then there's no concept of time and like true punishment. So our dad had this thought where if we acted out and if he had to punish us, we were grounded till we learned something that he gave us, right? He's like, you're grounded till you learn this one poem to, you know, a level that I accept.
Yeah.
This piece of music, learn how to solve a Rubik's Cube, juggling, pen spinning, all these different things, right? We like quickly collected all these different like random skills, but also we played in Carnegie Hall on the piano. I was nationally ranked in tennis for a short period of time when I was younger. I had a pro boxing license, like all these different.
I love all
like,
of this, by the way.
So wait, and all of this came from being punished at different points in your life?
I would say so.
I mean, I think that's a pretty
not to go off track,
forward-thinking way.
not to go off track, but like I saw somebody who punishes somebody by making their children read a book
Yeah.
or something like that.
That was part of it too. Like,
you know,
he was
like so, like I think those are
Yeah. Instead of
Very
taking away,
acceptable.
like I think that's like what we're all so accustomed to is like, oh, we'll take your iPad or we'll take your this or your toy away.
If I gave my child a
It's
Rubik's
actually-
Cube and said you're not getting any of this punishment,
They'll
till you
figure
finish
it out.
They'll figure it out.
So you can solve a Rubik's Cube to this day.
Yep.
Oh man.
So it's all these different things that you like. It also instilled this kind of need to complete a task that like sometimes means if I have something on my mind, sometimes I'll stay up a little too late looking into it, or I might like avoid other interactions that I could have had because I'm like nose first in a book.
Right. Just got to figure out how to get it done.
So distilling became that thing, right? It became that new obsession for us. And after our first failure, which we had that first ginger beer, we were like, we didn't really look into this too much. That's really uncharacteristic of us. We're like, we have to start looking into this. And we ended up getting this still, ended up making something that we again failed at. We felt ourselves like we failed at. And it kind of led my brother more so than me into getting super scientific, super technical with it. And over the course of the next few years, he was really just headfirst into it. We realized, what can we do to start? We could probably make brandy because we don't know anything about fermentation. We could take wine, make it alcohol. So that's pretty cool. We were like, okay, that's cool. And then it's reading into all of the different splits and cuts and all that stuff, which led us at this point, we were working at a bunch of different restaurants and kind of working up the scale of things, like to the next level of like, I guess, fanciness is kind of like what we were like saying to ourselves in our head. Well, it didn't always mean more money, but it meant like learning something and like enjoying craft and like
Right.
and like unique things. And at this point, we were working at a country club in called Fiddler's Elbow Country Club in Bedminster.
Nice place. I know
Yeah.
the place, yeah.
Yeah, so we were working there in their like fine dining restaurant, and turns out one of like the bar manager during that time, he was he just won like the Iron Shaker. He was considered one of the best bartenders in the state, like super well known. Currently, he's considered like the godfather of craft cocktails in New Jersey or something like that.
It's a great story, by the way.
Yeah,
Thanks.
I'm like so intently listening over here.
I'm like,
I thought I knew the story.
Yeah.
no,
this isn't even close yet.
This is great.
Yeah. So he finds out from us that we're like home distilling and that we're making brandy. He's like, you know what? If you bring me enough of this brandy, I'll stick it in a barrel and we'll just serve it to our guests behind the bar. Cause like we're not selling. We're just like letting our random guests try it. Like it's fine. Right. And so we go home. At this point, we've been covertly distilling everything. Our mom had no idea and all that. We're like, we just moved home. We set up our stills in the basement. She's like, what is this? And I was like, oh, don't worry about it.
Science experiment.
Yeah, right. We and in order to fill even a small barrel for this behind the bar program was like 5 gallons or something like that. The size equipment that we were working with, it took us like a few days of distilling because it's really
Meant for not.
it's really not meant for that quantity.
5 gallons, yeah.
So as we're distilling through the night for a few days, my mom catches us, and instead of really getting mad at us, she actually goes, oh, that's so cool. You know, your grandfather used to distill during the Soviet prohibition, and like we always had random stuff dripping, and I think he was making stuff out of peas. And so we hear this, and apparently she then tells us that growing up, seeing it all the time, she always wished that she had a still. And she's like, when I grow up, I'm going to have a still, and it's going to always be dripping random stuff too.
So here you guys are in your parents' basement thinking that like the jig is up, you're caught.
Yeah.
Mom's going to make us get rid of the still, and she's thrilled that you're doing this.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
pretty cool. I love it.
So we at this point, we finished that brandy. It goes into a barrel, and apparently it comes out super, super good. The owner of the country club's trying it, like random guests. There's a cognac guy from like one of the oldest cognac families. He's like visiting, trying to sell the country club some cognac. And the bartender goes, yeah, you should try some of this brandy that these random employees made. And we're like, no, please don't try any of that. Yeah. And he tries it. He's like, actually, this is pretty good. He like, obviously it's nowhere near the quality, but you could tell when at least all of the bad parts were taken out.
Yeah.
So he kind of gave us some encouragement. At this point, we started talking to our grandma, who pulls out these recipe cards for what she was our grandfather was doing.
That's great.
With peas.
Yeah.
This like pea vodka. And we hear from our grandma that apparently, like during this Soviet prohibition era, which in general is just a cool era that like no one really knows about, and we didn't even know about. We were 22, 23-year-olds, I think 23 at this point, and just hearing now about the Soviet prohibition, which was in the 80s. And the fact that, you know, our grandfather was doing this, how cool it was, the fact that KGB agents were coming to our house to drink this moonshine that my grandfather was making, because apparently it just tasted so good, and he had friends all over the place, and people just like loved him, and we're like, well, okay, that's cool. We should take this recipe and at least try it. At this point, we were only making brandy, like I said, and this kind of put us down a path where, first of all, we had to learn the fermentation science,
Right.
Because we
Totally
weren't
process now, right?
we weren't doing that part of it at all. It was just distilling. But now we have to ferment something that, to our knowledge, we did so much research, no one had ever really done.
With peas.
With peas, yeah.
Now, did your grandfather use peas just simply because that's what he had available to him?
Yeah, so to go back again once in time. So there were 2 prohibitions in Russia as a whole, if you want to take Russia. The first one was in the 1910s. It was the world's first prohibition. The government took away alcohol completely during World War I, because everyone who wasn't at war was basically drowning themselves in alcohol.
Gotcha.
And that was one of those catalysts, and a lot of historians point to that as that final straw that caused the revolution, which started the whole, USSR and all that stuff. The second one was 1986. Gorbachev, who at this point he was taking a look at the relationship between the U.S. and the Soviet Union. He was like, we're trying to open things up, but actually now that we're opening things up, we see how much the USSR is falling behind the U.S. And also because the Soviet Union made and distributed everything itself because of its relationship, they were like, okay, we're in an interesting position where we could just make less alcohol and distribute less alcohol, and give everyone tokens so that everyone, every man, woman, and child can claim their free bottles of vodka, however many bottles they decide that month. And actually, that goes into our whole name,
right?
Where it's 3BR stands for 3 bottles or riot, because my parents, even though it varied from month to month, my parents distinctly remember 2 bottles per person a month was the ration during their wedding, because, obviously you're going to remember when literally everyone's wedding gift to you can only be, I brought my 2 only bottles of vodka this month, right? So to answer your question, as soon as they started rationing vodka, as soon as they started making this whole soft prohibition, as they called it, happen, they realized 2 things. So first of all, they realized sugar consumption's through the roof all of a sudden, and that meant everyone was just making sugar shine, taking every bit of sugar that they could and just making their own alcohol, and that everyone was just as drunk as before. So clearly,
if you're going to get drunk, you're going to find a way to get drunk.
They're going to figure it out.
Yeah.
So what did the government do? They started rationing sugar, which, crazy because there's so many things you do with sugar, but they were like, the most important thing is that people don't get drunk, so they'll figure it out otherwise. And they, similarly, during this time, a lot of there were some food insecurities and other things, so not everything was always available. And now with sugar gone and a lot of other things missing from the shelves, my grandfather, who was this absolute genius, I could talk for 10 minutes about him in general, how didn't graduate from even middle school because it was right after the war, was building radios, pocket radios for all of his friends at age of 13 years old, when it was illegal to own radios, just because he figured it out and he was doing these things. Built a wiretap when he was 20 years old or something like that, because he was just I wonder if I could do it. Once he figured it out, the government got him in trouble and instead of punishing him, they ended up giving him a job as an engineer, which skipped him 12 years of schooling, but they were this guy's a genius. We need to
utilize him.
We need to utilize him. So rose through the ranks, and by this time he was one of the head elevator engineers for the entire Soviet Union. So he did all the missile silos, the space program elevators, the underground cities. He was one of the most top secret individuals in the country.
Meanwhile, he's being top secret at home with the PVOC.
and yeah, so he was just a super smart guy, and he figured out one thing that is always available, one thing that's super starchy and is able to, if you treat it right, convert the sugars to starch and make alcohol from the starch to sugars, is are peas. Peas are a rotation crop. You actually use them in at farms in order to add nitrogen back into the soil to recuperate the fields, which actually, funny enough, and I'll mention this later, makes them carbon negative as an ingredient, which like no matter how you look at it is actually really cool, and it's like sustainable as an ingredient. But he took those like he's like, well, Russia / the Soviet Union grows a lot of peas. And they're always on the shelves. Everyone buy up all the peas you can. No one's really using them. Like, let's make alcohol. And he figured it out, and he was running a pretty large operation in his apartment just from need, not really from flavor or anything. But it's cool how it turned out to taste so great and really like affect us and our whole like creativity that really just seeped in.
And great that your grandmother actually still had the recipes. Like once you guys figured out this is something you're into, that's pretty wild in and of itself.
The whole story is crazy.
I mean, who would have thought? Like I understand, like like my wife and my mom have like my grandmother's recipe book, but distilling moonshine essentially in the house during a sort of prohibition that they had, like, was a passing thing, and she actually cut the recipes.
But here's what's interesting about that too, right? Because you're right. Because like my mother-in-law made my wife a cookbook of her recipes. But in that cookbook, if I read it, it's like a pinch of this, a handful of that. Like the fact that you had the recipe and it was legit and manageable and you could read it and replicate it.
Have you guys had to alter the recipe at all, or is it like pretty much the same?
So for years we were doing it exactly as was written there.
Okay.
And it was good. It was a good product. But the thing is, my grandfather, he wasn't a hipster. He wasn't trying to be the coolest guy ever, right? And like make something fully out of peas. What was super important during this time is to entertain his friends, make as much product as he can. And peas are really actually hard to use. Like you can use them, and he figured it out, but they're hard to use. So he was supplementing in as much sugar as he could into the recipe. And when we decided to do this ode to him recipe, we decided to, take it a step further and know that if he had the choice, if he would have been like, you know what, no one's doing this, let me do this thing. And we decided to just use 100% just peas, no sugar, which was a whole thing, which when we were going around trying to get this started, this is an idea for years and years and us experimenting. We were going around from distillery to distillery, talking to as many people as we could. Not really even scared that people were going to steal the idea, because the story is really the most important part of all this. Like, how do you get there other than that? And we were trying to, talk to them and be like, so we have this plan. Like, we're trying to do this. It's really hard. We can't quite get the yield to make sense. Like, it's costing us like a fortune. Yeah.
Is this a community that embraces that? Like, I'll help you out. Like if somebody else has a cold brew question, will they reach out? Maybe, maybe not. A lot of people don't want to give out recipes like that. So were they embracing that? Like you were looking for answers?
Yeah. So a few good things, right, that come from this is that yes, distilling is a hard industry to be in. So much paperwork, so much scrutiny by the government. So hard to get your license, and also not a lot of owners then become the distillers. Sometimes they'll just find random people. So the people that we were talking to, I don't know if they were really owners of the company and really cared as much maybe about their secrets. They were really more about, that's so interesting and creative. And like when we talked to them, I don't know how much they really offered in terms of help. They definitely told us their things and told us like what didn't work when they were trying to start a distillery, what did. Gotcha. But the most important thing is when we were talking to them about peas, almost everyone told us it's impossible. As far as they can see, they're like, there's no way you're ever going to get it to a point where it's commercially viable. Like it could be like a fun product you have behind the bar that you're like, oh, look at this like $100 bottle of vodka made from peas, right? But But I have to say at this point, which is a little pat on our back, a few things, right? We spent years perfecting that recipe to a point where it's now our fastest product to make. Actually ferments faster than pure sugar. Like the peas just the yeast just loves the peas the way we figured everything out.
Yeah.
Takes a day and a half to ferment, which is wild.
What does like normal vodka take?
So it depends on the ingredients that you start with, but generally no shorter than like 3 days, 3 days to a few weeks.
So you cut it in half
on some things, yeah.
Wow.
It's crazy.
And so fast, one of our cheapest products to make because we figured out really how to get maximum yield out of the peas. And beyond everything, it tastes great. It won us Vodka of the Year internationally at the biggest convention in the world for spirits.
That's amazing.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. So, and that was off a blind taste test. They just tried our vodka and they're like, "This is amazing." They didn't get to hear this entire story about why peas in general.
Now, the story, not to cut you off, the story and having been to the distillery, like the setup of everything adds so much to it, on top of the fact that the booze is really good.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like at this like world competition, are there like the vodkas that everybody knows there too? Like, do they even compete at these things?
So it's some. I can't say that it's all of them, but it's also a lot of times those vodkas that everyone knows.
Mm-hmm.
They're your standard, like no flavor, no like texture, no frills vodkas, which is in the end, it's a completely different thing. If you want vodka that tastes like rubbing alcohol, like your brands to go to because that's what you're expecting from your vodka. But these types of competitions, a lot of newcomers that are like, this is technically vodka, this tastes great, like try this thing. Those are the ones that are competing.
Yeah, I got you.
And like to get, best vodka at a competition like this, it was just a moonshot for us to apply. We were just like, you know what, this costs us money to apply, but maybe we'll get some accolade from it. And we were floored by that.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah,
really is.
But yeah, so I have to say like that's such a huge, like, to go from where we were just trying out this recipe and then figuring out ways of actually making that full peas mash that we thought was impossible. Everyone was telling us was impossible. My brother did so much work to get that to work, and it's crazy where we are now.
So you guys perfect the recipe.
Mm-hmm.
You know it's good, and now you're like, we got to go all in on this and really make something of it, right?
So it kind of went even stranger. Our whole story is interesting in so many different ways. Like there's tons of weird connections. Always, honestly, I listen to a lot of podcasts. I don't know if you guys listen to How I Built This.
I'm familiar with it.
Yeah.
It's amazing podcast where at some point in the episode, like near the end, he always asks the same questions, like how much of this is luck and how much is hard work, right? And the answer is always like, obviously there's so much luck, but you really have to go for all the different shots. Like you have
1,000%.
to, yeah. So it's hard. A part of this story is really about that. Let's see, when we were doing this whole thing, my brother and I were going to school for different things, right? I was going for finance. He was doing forensic psychology. He had his master's. He was like top of his class, like killing it. Had a TA lined up for next semester after graduation, applying for PhD programs. And I was finishing up with my finance degree, hoping to go to Wall Street, all stuff, make money so that I could eventually open a distillery, as like most people's trajectory is, right? Like I'm a college kid with a ton of loans and stuff like that. I'm not really in the position to open a business.
I feel like most of the distilleries and the breweries you see, it's like the second thing that the people that own it do because it takes so much to get involved.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a lot. And what kind of happened was some bad luck, which, we rolled with. So My brother broke his leg like really, really badly. And he had some complications from the injury, was like laid up in a hospital bed for like in and out for like 2 years.
Oh, wow.
Fully sidetracked his whole entire life. He couldn't do his TA. He couldn't apply for any grad schools for his PhD because like it just like he didn't know what was happening.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I took the first job I could out of school to help support him and the family and like make sure everyone's okay. I was like initially going for those like basically non-paid internships and stuff like that. I was like, I can't do that. I'll take like the first thing I could. Wasn't anything I was super happy with. He's obviously not happy. He's like laid up in bed. And we just decided we were like in that moment, we decided we're like, we either feel bad for ourselves and like try to, you know, get through this, or we could use this time when you're laid up, I'm not happy and at work, and we could work on a business plan and try to get this business rolling sooner rather than later and figure it all out. So that's kind of what we did. We took years writing a business plan, gathering the A team with like our friends and like different you know, specialties and things that we knew we needed. Brought back that PhD geneticist roommate.
Good move.
We were like, but you're like, I'm listening to the story, and I'm telling you, it's funny. You're like, you know, some businesses need luck, and I'm like, yeah, no kidding. I'm like, well, you're like, oh, and the roommate's a
that sounds like
forensic
luck.
scientist, and he's messing with plants, and I'm like, well, of course he is.
Yeah.
But you need a certain level of luck. I totally believe that.
Yeah.
I totally believe that.
A
I mean,
high level of luck most of the time.
yeah. And things just have to fall into place.
They do.
And sometimes it's not so much of like, you know, what you did or it's who you know and all
Well,
those
it's,
things.
you know,
Like,
not
and that's
the-
just
it's
like the
the-
country club and
Yeah. It's,
and then all of a sudden, like, it's not like, oh, your grandfather used to, you know, distill. Like, oh, no, really? Did he really? And you're like, yeah, do you have those recipes? Like, nah, we don't have them.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, it was just like luck after luck.
Yeah, yeah,
Like, these
it's-
things just keep lining up and like, you almost feel like you're unstoppable.
yeah, no, exactly. And
When you roll in like that,
And yeah, so at this point, this hits us like, how did we actually open up and find a place? We were like, okay, we kept putting away money into this account, like tried to like build up this business bank account with as much money as we could. It wasn't much, like we all didn't have much. We were just putting things away. And we started looking all over kind of like an hour radius around our house, trying to find a town that wanted us there, because we found one thing that we really found out from a lot of distilleries is a lot of them will find a building that they really like and then try to jump through hoops to get the town on board, get all the people around it on board, their community, all that stuff. And a lot of them start and then shut down because they just can't get their license after a bunch of different things
because
go
of like
wrong.
local, like,
Yeah.
got it.
So, and one thing with the not the liquor license, distilling license that we have, right? We don't have a liquor license. It's technically a craft distilling license. One thing about it is it's hard to get. You need to have a building that you're renting already or own. You need to have your equipment prior to even applying for your license.
It sounds so backwards.
Well, yeah, because it's like, hey, take all the risk up front.
Who's doing
And
that?
hopefully we give you the license.
Yeah.
Who's doing that? Is the guy sitting right next to us?
no, but I'm saying like in theory though, right? Like
It's wild.
I mean, again, this is like just what I'm saying. Like if you had you know, in another state and you've done it and you're like, I'm going to do this over here and do a second one. Like, hey, New Jersey's your state. Like this
Well, New
makes
Jersey's
sense.
definitely not yours. New Jersey.
No,
is
but I'm
tough
saying,
on
like,
all that
It
stuff.
is
it-
tough, but, yeah.
Because it's a backwards plan. It doesn't make
Yeah.
any sense.
No, it's hard. It's all a moonshot, and there's so many of these distilleries that will try to start, and it just doesn't go anywhere, and tons of money down the drain. So if you go on your forums, you'll always see like, oh, selling my equipment because my license didn't get approved or whatever, right? So at this point, we're like, okay, so let's take a different approach than trying to find a building and then getting it approved. Let's try to find a town that really wants us there.
Okay.
And have them find us a building and then try to make everything work out.
Okay. Like this.
So we were pitching all over. No one was really even like biting. No one was even like returning our calls or emailing us back. It's whatever. We're like 26-year-old kids, like who like could even
and they don't take
like
you
trust
seriously
us.
either,
Yeah,
right?
no one's gonna take you seriously. But we were, again, another one of those luck things. My brother sees one of our old high school friends, like he posts about a Latip group that he's a part of, and he goes, hey, I'm looking for random people, and are you starting a business or you have a business? Like, come with me to this thing. Didn't really even like, we weren't even like, I would say friends too close with this guy in high school. But we were like, okay, well, networking can't hurt. At this point, we were doing a bunch, but like nothing ever worked. We're like, let's go to this meeting. Went to the meeting, tell everyone the story, the idea. Everyone loves it so much. They're like, how can we help? A lot of them started being like, oh, I think I know like the person in this town and this town and this town. And through one of them, we ended up getting a meeting in Keyport. And we're at this meeting with Keyport. They're like really the first ones to take us seriously.
Oh, wow. That's great.
And they're like, we're doing this meeting. We have this killer presentation. We're like talking to them. We're like, yeah. And the borough administrator all of a sudden just like stops and he's like on his phone scrolling. We're like, okay, let's just keep going. Like maybe he actually like just needs to check something or something, and he didn't want to distract us. And all of a sudden, he just like starts playing the Soviet anthem on his phone, and we're like, "What?" He's like, "I love this song. I always have it on my Spotify. Play it around." We're like, "This is so funny!" Like,
of course, but it's like, of course,
yeah, it's one of those.
But
things.
that's like, what is the luck of that?
Exactly.
Like,
There's
crazy.
Honestly so much of these things, and he's like, "I love this idea. Like, we want you guys here." He's like, "What kind of building do you need?" At this point, another thing that we heard from a lot of distillers was really location matters. A lot of distilleries will set up in the middle of nowhere, like in an industrial park, because it's super cheap, because you need to pay months and months of rent before you even start going. And they'll be in the middle of an industrial park. They'll bring in food trucks randomly. But at this point, you need to be that destination. And it's hard to start that way. Like, no one's going to be like, you know what? Let's randomly go over there. Like, you have to be the plan for the night. You can't be one of the pieces of a plan or like a just out of nowhere decision. So we decided, from the beginning, we're like, let's try to look for downtown areas. And that was probably why a lot of towns weren't returning our calls, because we're like, well, like, no one's really needs a downtown distillery
You
that
sure?
much. Yeah, well, we hopefully proved a lot of people wrong, but
1000%.
we tell him, we're like, we want to be in the downtown, as close as possible to the downtown. We want to have 18-foot ceilings and 5,000 square feet. And he's like, he looks at us, he's like, I don't think that's possible. But he's like, I'll keep an eye out for you guys. And we continued searching, continued talking to other towns, all this stuff. 8 months later, we get a call from him. We thought he'd forgotten about us. And he goes, perfect building just came on. And he showed us 5,000 square feet, 18-foot ceilings, right in the downtown, literally exactly perfect for us.
Of course. Well, listen, I thought I was going to call you the next day, honestly, the way the story was going.
Yeah. And we took a look at it. We're like, this is it. Like, we had at that point, before we had that random meeting in Keyport, never even heard of Keyport, honestly. But like, fell in love when we came in, because we're like, this is a cute little town. Like, you could see the water from this building. Like, this is cute, right? We then took a very, very big gamble. And again, this is where like luck also can run out, and it could be a huge, huge hit. At this point, we had in our bank account just enough money to get through like a year of rent and maybe utilities. And we would obviously add to that. and we didn't have enough money for all of our equipment or rent for the 5-year lease.
Right.
So we tried to negotiate a 1 year out into our lease, which we got. And at this point, we were like, okay, we have literally the perfect location. Let's see if we can make this business work, and see if anyone believes in us and our story and all that stuff enough to grant us the additional funds necessary to make this happen. And it all like worked out in one way or another, which is it's so cool. We we were able to get the equipment leased just based off of the story and like other things. So it's a lease to own situation on our equipment. We were able to then secure just enough like between family and friends to like pad our bank account enough to get the place moving. Yeah. And put in the application. And really it's the fact that we took that risk and people saw the building. You're able to see physically like here's a thing
we've got
that
the spot, we're ready
like
to go.
the perfect spot, like this is what we need. We started the architecture plans, all that stuff. That was all like risks that we took because we didn't know if it was actually going anywhere, but it all in the end paid off.
That's fantastic.
What year did you open the distillery?
Yeah, so that's that was a part that didn't work out so well. And if you want to talk about luck running out, but we don't look that way a lot. So we incorporated in 2018, thinking that it's going to take a few years for us to get. 2020, January of 2020 is when we signed the lease. So that was great. So
that was great.
That was awesome.
No, honestly, with COVID aside, like obviously a lot of things got slowed down. The application process with the government just like came to a halt, and a process that usually took 6 months took 12, or like actually more like 14 months.
Wow.
So more than double the length of time for the application and where you're paying rent and all that other stuff. But I have to say, I think this was a good time period for us because we were able to put a little bit more time and effort into the brand, into like we were all there basically every day we could, painting and like doing random renovations and things like that.
I mean, it probably did benefit you more than if you were open for a year or two beforehand and everything just stopped, because now you're just sitting there with product that you're in the middle of making or made, or expecting people to walk through the door and they're not. Instead, you're able to utilize that time effectively and efficiently to get the place ready to go for when you're able to.
Well, the other thing too is that there's no real processes yet because the customers aren't like you're still kind of soft launch at that point. Yeah. So when you're like, hey, we have to pivot now to deal with this, the social distancing and if we're allowed to serve but you can make all of those processes in the moment. Yeah. Because there wasn't something that you saw that you had to scrap. You were going to just create it at live, like on the spot.
So we do absolutely see that as honestly good luck. It was lucky that we didn't open a few months before and all of a sudden had all these additional expenses and maybe employees and other stuff that we would have had to forego. Unlucky that technically we saw not a single dime from like the different programs because we had no revenue prior to 2020.
Right.
So that didn't help, but there's so many like positives and things that we always kept a good, cool head, always like just kept moving, trucking and trying to make it work. I mean, same as my brother's injury and not feeling bad for ourselves. We took the situation, we kept running with it.
Well, and I think too, like guys, you were saying how you were raised, like that see it through approach.
Yeah.
Like it was going to happen no matter what. Once you got the keys to that door. Yep. It was game on. So I think it's cool. It's a great story.
That's awesome. So, all right. So now you're open. You have Vodka.
Yep.
When you guys open, are there other spirits that you're already working on or serving, or is it strictly just vodka when you guys open?
Yeah. So we spent those years in between, like learning about our grandfather and the Vodka, and and actually incorporating. We spent those years trying out like various weird ingredients. Where like if peas can make alcohol, what other things out there can we make alcohol from? And it really like soon became like my brother's personality, where he always was such an artistic person, always did art, always did all these different things. And he took that creativity like to the next level with this, where he's just like, how do I make art with ingredients? And yeah, and he kept thinking of these crazy random things that like no one was doing. And so when we first opened, we had a few products, but we already had like the next like almost 20 products in Alex's head, where like they were all just some crazy thing that no one's ever done. We had already made world's first fully a vodka made 100% out of peas, right? Then we brought back a recipe from the 1960s from the Soviet Union, which was their version of rum that they were making, which was a sugarcane and prune juice recipe that like the world almost forgot about. We like revived this at this point like 60-year-old recipe that everyone was freaking out about back in the 60s and then forgot about.
It was like a fad.
It was a fad.
Yeah.
And that like soon became one of our favorites. We tried our hand years at taking a tequila and actually being able to make it this far north without our with some restrictions that we had. So technically we don't make a tequila, we make a specialty agave spirit.
Yeah, because it's not from the region, right?
So it's not from Mexico, and also we kind of play hard and loose with a few things we found from years of experimentation in our basement, obviously. That the only way to really imitate a lot of those agave, like good tequila flavors, when you only have access to agave nectar and not like raw agave that you could roast and like mull with like mules and other stuff and like do all these things with, is hops. We found that hops have like a very the right hops and the right combination have an interesting similar profile. And so we're like, what if we take this agave mash and we dry hop it like a beer would to kind of try to add those like flavors. Right. And then we distill it. So it's still a purely distilled product, but it has those tequila notes to it in a way where if you just try to use agave syrup, like agave nectar, like some places around us tried to do, you don't like, if you tried just that, you'd get like more of a rum like thing, because agave nectar is already so processed, lost like almost all of its like unique special quality to it. So we took that. Those are the first three. We then took a cigar, we took an aged pea spirit that like tastes like chocolate and cigars and like the tobacco, chocolate, coffee notes to it. Made that quickly became my brother and I's favorite. It's the one that we sip on like in the night, because it's like it's flavor on like anything you've ever had. And we actually have tomorrow, I know this comes out way after, but we have a specialty release night tomorrow with a double barrel aged version of it, with cigar truck lounge in the back and a roller in our space. So it's gonna be really cool, and very cool. We're really I'm looking forward to that on Friday. But we then got written about in Craft Spirits magazine we made a maple syrup spirit. So we took 55 gallons of grade A maple syrup, fermented, distilled it into a really, really unique product. It's super expensive and like super tasty and different. And it's again one of those things that it sounds like it makes sense to do and like that other people have done it, but it's really something that no one really does or has done before in that quantity. We made our gin. We decided to do a garlic, chive, mushroom, dill, like savory gin.
Let's go. I'm back in.
Joey Jane over here.
Yeah.
We did a tomato liqueur from 2,500 pounds of New Jersey tomatoes, a dandelion amaro from over 120 pounds of dandelion heads, dandelion root to bitter it, and the entire U.S. supply of dandelion honey to sweeten it. We literally cornered the market on dandelion honey just to make one product, and it's so cool. And so many people asked for that one again. But we started like creating these like random things, and at this point we're at 33 products made in the last 3 years.
Wow, that's wild.
And
now, how many do you have at any one given time?
So at the moment, we're at about 14 consistently being made.
Okay.
A portion of those being liqueurs and like stuff like limoncello back here, I see. Mm-hmm. And of those seven spirits that are always being made, and those are 7 spirits that are all made with super unique ingredients. Like, for instance, one of those that we thought was going to be a one-off product, but ended up becoming such a success for us that we decided to kind of circle back and make more of it. Again, with the luck here, but it's how it's.
Can I guess which one it is?
Yeah, which one?
Is it this pickle martini I've been hearing about? Is there a pickle martini?
No, so the pickle martini is an amazing like cocktail.
Yeah, it's just a cocktail that you make with, right? Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I heard about this. I
was
like,
when I was there, my wife had the pickle martini.
Nice.
And she was like over the moon with the pickle martini. It was funny.
It really honestly makes such a difference with our vodka.
Yeah.
And that vodka just has so much like earthy flavor to it that like martinis just stand out so well. We actually had like a dirty martini contest where we had like any bartender wants to like make them, and like submitted a bunch of recipes. Because it really, I see it eventually that the Mendel vodka, like it's a great vodka, but it's not super neutral. It's not your like Tito's in terms of like that clean flavor. It's more something you could sip on and enjoy, like a whiskey almost.
Okay.
But there's a reason why I won Vodka of the Year, because like it's so rare to have that from a vodka. But I see it hopefully at some point in the future being that like go-to dirty martini vodka on every shelf where people are just like, they're like, I'll have a dirty martini, and obviously with the Mendel vodka. So that's the goal. But the random success that I was kind of alluding to, and the luck that like continuously falls in our direction. My brother was at a bar in Jersey City, and he was like sitting with his girlfriend, and he sees someone sitting next to him, like another pair, and she orders a whiskey, and my brother's drinking whiskey all night, and he was always getting like standard glasses. She gets a whiskey, and it gets served in a specialty glass, and he's like, "What is that?" And he actually starts talking to her. Turns out that she had recently just come from Korea. She was South Korea. She was a rice wine sommelier. So it's called Mooli. She traveled around the country and learned.
I can't.
Stories are nuts.
I can't.
And learn like the from masters how to make Mooli, because something that I'm sure you guys have had at some point, soju.
I don't think so.
It's a Korean spirit, commonly nowadays in these tiny little green bottles.
Okay.
And it's usually flavored, and it's like 20% or less. So what happened was I forgot what year the Korean War was, but when the Korean War happened, unfortunately, the Korean government prohibited the use of rice to make alcohol, because there was a famine going on, all these different things. And so this tradition of turning rice into makgeolli, which is rice wine, was the Korean version of sake. No one come at me with that. It's not exactly the same. It's a different type of fermentation, all that other stuff. But the makgeolli, you would then distill makgeolli into a soju, so you'd make a rice spirit out of it. that tradition got almost like wiped away completely because people still wanted to drink. It kind of comes back to the whole Soviet thing. People want to drink, they'll figure out how to do it. And people figured out that they can make soju out of different ingredients. They started making it out of sweet potato and started taking it down to 20% and making it easier to drink. And like everything changed. And so this tradition was lost almost, but there's all these like national treasures. They're actually considered national treasures all around Korea that still make makgeolli, still make soju, but in like 5-gallon pails because they were doing it from before the Korean War.
Right.
She had just traveled all around. She wants to open a makgeolli place at some point in New Jersey. They become friends. He starts, like, they're going back and forth on things. And my brother has the genius idea. He's like, you know, for one of these random releases that we're doing, let's put out a super, super traditional soju, like pre-Korean War soju in this giant batch. We'll have her come in, help us make a giant batch of makgeolli. You know, she gets to experiment on large equipment. She gets to figure things out for her own brewery down the line. And we get to reap the reward and do this thing together. So we make this giant batch of makgeolli, which we distill into a soju. And it comes out so, so good. It's so different, so unique. So, like, the notes on there are just... like almost breaks all of our equipment because like it wasn't meant to deal with 1,700 pounds of rice that we imported all from Korea. We did all these like specialty things that, you know, no distillery is doing in the U.S. and like almost none in Korea specifically. And we do this thing, comes out amazing. She loves it. And she's like, well, I kind of know a few Korean people that might really like this. She contacts the only master som in the entire world from Korea. He happens to have an importing business where he brings in his tagline, only the real soju, into the U.S. and distributes it to Michelin Korean star restaurants across the country. He comes in, he tries it. He like loves the product. He's like, this is so good. And the price point made sense. We're not importing it, so there's no fees or whatever. Yeah. Like, super traditional. Everything was done to code. And he's like, if you want, we could put my stamp of approval on this, and I'll buy a pallet from you guys to distribute. And he, like, and we do it. He loves it. He gets the pallet. He starts selling it all over the, like, to his restaurants. Yeah. And... like, we thought it was going to be a one-time thing. He reordered again. Now we've made 3 batches of it. So it's
keep
like,
it going.
It's honestly, it's one of those things where I would love for it to take off because we're truly trying to do everything super right and traditionally and everything. We're not trying to steal anything. We're not trying to be a Soviet Korean distillery either. But like, we really loved the tradition. We paid homage to it. We continue to have her come in and help us make it and all these things. And it's so cool. It's cool it's one of my favorite products.
Even though it's so different than, you know, what you guys are making otherwise and the story, it still fits into that uniqueness of everything that you guys make. Yep. It's not like you made the P vodka and everything else you do is just traditional, just like everybody else does. Yep. And that fits right in line with it. It's super cool.
Yeah, I think that's the whole approach. Like,
I need some of this guy's luck though.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, I'm trying to like just inhale it. I'm trying to like, you know, get the aura around me. No, that's super cool. And like, I don't think like, you know, when you start, you're like, I mean, did you think that was going to happen? Did you think you were going to like, you can't see that stuff?
No, how could you?
No. And like, again, to kind of go back to it, like a lot of this luck really, and it 100% is luck. It's really coming from, like, Alex didn't have to, my twin brother didn't have to start talking to this random person at the bar. They didn't have to start talking industry things. He didn't have to offer it for her to use the equipment and all these other things. Like, it was all like, we really, I've always believed to be the best person that you can, you know, help everyone that you can, do what you can, keep working hard. And opportunities definitely come and they present themselves.
I think like the key here is just like how much effort was put in. Like you made effort after effort after. So like we're joking, obviously, like oh wow, that's so lucky, and this is so lucky. Like yeah, it is to a certain degree, but you also have to do, and you also have to step forward.
I think like the luck is the payoff for the hard work that was put in. I don't. It wasn't like you guys were just like, this is cool and like this would be fun, and then all these lucky things happen. Like you didn't just go, let's go find a random, like you didn't talk to somebody in Keyport that said we'd love a distillery. Like
no,
you put a business plan together and you went and you're around. You did all these meetings with all these. You still
went to the networking
towns.
event.
Yeah. You went to
how
the
many
networking
people
event.
get an email or see a Facebook event and don't go because like it's not given to them, and they don't know, they do or they don't know that something's gonna come out of it, so they just don't go because it's not guaranteed.
Yeah,
all the time.
Yeah,
it's so while we joke around that it's a super lucky story, it's a story about effort.
Yeah, it really
persistence.
Is.
100%. That's what 100%. I think. I tell you, it's a great story.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Your grandfather, who I isn't with us anymore, right?
No.
He must be proud up there. Like he really must be, because like I'm sure to have two generations after him come up and create such a cool business and successful business out of something that he did in a rough time, just based out of need alone and helping people. He's got to be super proud.
No, it's it's great. The whole story was great. You're like, it's a long story. I'm like, well, listen, I'm in.
That's a great. It's a great story, though. It really is a great story.
I think you were right, spot on in the beginning when you said like, people aren't gonna like they're gonna buy because of the story and they're gonna invest because of the story and people. I believe that to be true. I mean, all of that stuff. The stories are bringing people back, and I can just picture you guys at the distillery telling that story day in, day out.
Yeah, and
people probably heard it 3 times if you want to keep hearing it.
Yeah. Well, I remember like when I was there, the bartender told us, like, not the whole story, obviously, but like she gave us the broad strokes of like why I'm in this Soviet era themed distillery and what 3BR means and where the P vodka idea came from and stuff like that, which is cool. It's like a nice experience. It's different than, it's obviously very different than going to a bar. But you're not getting that everywhere. Like it's this real story that has like all this depth to it, which is even deeper.
Do you represent all of those different alcohol types there? Like, because I was under the impression that it was just vodka. I mean, that's just me being,
Yeah, so we have.
You said like a tequila almost. You make like a gin. You're making a vodka.
We have a bourbon. We have like we generally with distilling licenses, and this partially comes into play here with everything. With distilling licenses, only thing we're allowed to have behind our quote unquote bar, right, in our tasting room, is our own spirits, things that we make ourselves. So if we want to have an extensive program, right, cocktails of all types, we will have to make a bunch of different things. And it really, our one partner, the geneticist plant breeder guy, right?
Yeah.
We brought him in. He ended up becoming the bar manager, right? Like he used a lot of his
and he's still there?
And he's still there, yeah. He's we're hoping right now for his postdoc. He's gonna start breeding peas for us for the future. So we have this whole. We actually have like a 5-year, 50-year plan on this, because there's so much cool stuff that comes from peas, which was just such a like random find, and like we did it for our grandfather and the story and all that stuff, but turns out, like I said, peas are super sustainable. They're carbon negative, and we're actually, by the time this airs, we're actually going to be the first carbon neutral distillery in New Jersey. That was our goal. We always wanted to be sustainable.
I know we have one, but that'd be.
I'll add some in on the
edit. Now, silly question again. Yeah. Are you putting peas in everything, or is that just on the vodka?
So it's in 3 products right now.
Okay.
Which is our vodka, our aged spirit from peas, the one that I said kind of like cigar-like, and our savory gin. We thought it was a good base to it, and to add onto like the savoriness to it. the goal wasn't always to put peas in everything. We knew we wanted to just continue to make as many cool things as possible. And actually, it's funny, a little ode back to our origins. Our maybe 5th product we ever made was our 6th. We decided, like, Rutgers called us and they tell us, like, hey, we're just giving out like a few pounds of fresh baby ginger to a bunch of different places, bars, restaurants, stores, and seeing what they do with it, because they're trying to create a market for it so that they can sell this crop in the future to farmers or whatever to like grow. And they're like, oh, would you want like a few pounds for behind the bar? My brother instantly goes, it's redemption time.
Ginger beer.
And he's like, okay, so well, how about instead of a few pounds, is there any chance you could get us like 120 pounds of fresh baby ginger? And they're like, well, that's like the remainder of our thing, but like, what's your plan? He's like, I'm going to make a ginger spirit and a ginger and honey liqueur. And he kills it. First of all, the ginger beer that we made from it, fresh ginger beer, was fresh ginger, all that stuff.
Great.
That ginger beer was delicious. We all took like gallons home of it, but then we distilled it. We made it into this ginger spirit. So that was redemption number 1. We then distilled it, which is redemption number 2, which came out delicious. And then we work with a lot of local farms and community places, like our a lot of honey farmers. We found a New Jersey cranberry blossom honey, which we tried a lot of different honeys. That one works so well with the ginger because it had a little bit of tartness to it, all this stuff. That ended up becoming such a cool product for us that it's now one of our core 4 that we distribute in New York and New Jersey.
Very cool.
And it was, again, one of those things that, we took redemption to the next level.
And the phone call just happened. Like if you don't get that phone call from Rutgers and it's going, hey, you want a little bit of this ginger, it might not have ever happened.
Yeah, exactly.
That's wild.
That's great.
So, but what was the question originally that kind of led me down this rabbit hole?
I don't remember. Shame on me.
Oh, I think it was peas and everything.
It's peas and everything.
Yeah, so it's not always.
But
like I said, it's so many different things, so many different ideas floating around.
Yeah.
We have a crazy one that hopefully, if this airs middle to end of summer, it'll be a great like promo for it if it's not out already. But we're planning something that's gonna terrify, disgust, and maybe bring people in, especially from the shore.
Okay.
We're doing
saltwater taffy alcohol.
No, it's so much worse than that. We actually we joked about, it's so bad that we joked about with the earthquake that just happened. We were like, we angered the gods with this one. We want to do a pork roll, egg and cheese liqueur.
Stop
it.
Yeah.
Bet.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So it's
yes.
Yeah, exactly.
It's about time.
Exactly.
And he said pork roll.
Oh, yeah, listen, he's not Taylor Ham.
No,
absolutely not.
He's in pork roll territory.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, that's gonna be.
Get ready.
That's
I'm in.
wild.
Yeah.
That reminds me of like
I'm going.
Jones Soda that makes all those wacky soda flavors. Like they probably have pork roll, egg and cheese soda. You're in pork roll, egg and cheese alcohol. I like it.
Now, has it been sampled yet? Like, is there small batches that you're like, hey, it's gonna work?
It's gonna work.
I'm excited now.
Yeah.
Oh,
no, definitely gonna work. It's my brother's current mission in life. We've done all the separate parts, and it's so involved, but it's so fun and interesting. My brother's like mission in life now is to get this into a huge scalable product. It's worked in a small setting, like we've made shots of it. And it worked really, really well. So we're so excited for that.
Oh,
that's a midsummer release.
Oh, I can't. I'll be there. Let me know. I'm coming.
I'm dead serious.
Yeah.
I'm for real going. I'm excited.
That's great.
And you know, when you say it out loud though, like obviously it's like, oh, it's funny, and we've done things with like, hey, we're gonna do a pork roll, egg and cheese, or a pork roll flavored coffee on like April Fools or something like that. People are like, I want to try it, but it's probably like almost like a bacon alcohol. Like there's bacon vodka and stuff like that. And I kind of feel like if you can pull pork roll flavors like that, like bacon works on cocktails like that.
Yeah.
And liqueurs.
Yeah.
So why can't pork roll?
Of course it can.
pour alcohol to the masses.
Yeah.
Love it.
Now, you said you distribute to New Jersey and New York.
Mm-hmm.
So you're on obviously like is it in specifically in bars, or are you in liquor stores?
So we're in about 140 bars and restaurants in New Jersey and New York. We're hoping to double that this year. We just hired our first salesperson, right? It's a sales director that we hired. Has like a amazing background and like tons of connections. We're really hoping to utilize that. That's going to be big for us. We're hoping in the next month or so, we're in talks with some of the bigger distributors in New Jersey. We're currently distributing through a smaller guy. We're hoping to sign with this bigger guy, which is going to open up all the doors right now. That's like the most prohibitive thing for us. Is as a distillery, when you go into a bar, the bars want to order everything together. They want
it all from the distributor.
They want like to go onto 3 separate tabs and be like, I need all of this, I need all of this, I need all of this. Boom, it's gonna come the next week or in a few days. It's so hard for them to work with, us small companies where they're like, oh, but I'm also out of the vodka, so I need to contact 3BR separately about this and then that.
I feel like they do it for beer though.
They
I feel
do.
like a lot of breweries distribute their own kind of stuff locally.
They do somewhat.
I see a ton of beer trucks. They make on the Parkway. I'm saying specifically like a certain few that I see all the time.
Yeah. So there's some, and a lot of it is definitely a rolling, like it's definitely a rolling snowball where the more places you get, the more you can be like, oh, your competition down the road picked this up. You should, like, what's stopping you from ordering a local and all of us? But in the end, we have so much on our plates, so many different things that it just makes sense to eventually go to a distributor so that they can handle all of that.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
You can you're only going to get so big without doing it.
Yeah.
Right. You need them to go to the next level.
Yeah.
That's great.
That's awesome.
Well, I had all these questions to ask, and I tell you, I didn't ask not one.
No, but I still think so many of them got answered, and we could probably go for another hour.
Yeah. Which I'm not going to do that, but all of that was super. That was great. The whole thing was great. The story was phenomenal.
It's fantastic.
I guess I'll wrap with this one though. What is your favorite Jersey Shore memory?
Yeah. So actually, sorry, I think I need more coffee, but yeah. So what I always kind of think back on is this like time period between 2018 when we incorporated and 2020 when we actually finally started leasing our place. It was really like go time for 2 years where we did so much, and we were making so much, talking to so many people. One of my fondest memories is that same partner who, the plant geneticist guy, his family, he lives in Brooklyn. His family rents an LBI every single year for a few weeks. They like love it. It's like a whole thing for them. It's always around like 4th of July, and they always make a thing of it, and they're always so open to all their friends and family. Everyone come down to the house, and it was really my first real experience with the shore. Like, obviously I grew up going randomly with my parents, but it was during this time period, I think we spent like a week at his house, like sleeping on like an air mattress in the living room, like nothing crazy. But we took with us, I think like 5 to 10 different samples of different things that we've made. And we printed out all these different sheets for everyone, all the family, friends, to fill out like, do you like this? Like, what's good about this? That's like, cool. What do you like that? And like, we had this like really, really nice night where all of us, we had gone on the beach all day and like had fun, and then sat down at night before the party started, and we all just like sat, sampled, wrote notes, and it was like 20 people that are all just like so like invested in our
That's cool.
in our like growth and like everything, and it was it's a fond memory for sure.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. I mean, especially like at such the infancy stages of like really exploding the business. So good stuff.
Yeah. Well, listen, I appreciate you coming. I'm glad we're finally able to connect, and I'm gonna definitely be picking up a couple more bottles at the Marlboro.
Oh,
Marlboro
absolutely.
Market.
Yeah, we start in a few months, so get there soon.
All right. Well, appreciate it. And hold on, one more thing. Where can people? What's the address of the distillery? Social medias, things like that.
Yeah. So address is 7 Main Street in Keyport, New Jersey. We're right in the downtown area of Keyport. Mm-hmm. It's pretty easy to find if you know where McDonough's is, or most people know that as like a nice Irish pub. It's we're right behind it, right on that same block as it. You could follow us at 3BR Distillery. The website 3brdistillery.com or 3BR Distillery for any social media. Yeah.
All right. Awesome.
Perfect. Good stuff.
All right.
Thanks again, Max.
Yeah, so long.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Coffee Before You Talk to Me. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Bean Muggin Coffee Co. and subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Until next time, keep that coffee hot. And please, coffee before you talk to me.